So this morning, I saw this particular video on YouTube, and I'm just going to go ahead and play it for you. And it's an I told you so. That's right, I told you so. That the Christians are going to invade Israel for one final crusade. All right? Let's go ahead and play this.
Britain First rally in Manchester today. Look at the flags. Britain First, ready to move. Whoa. This is utterly terrifying. How did racism get so bad in this country? Who's a stupid right there? Prone to typos? Yeah, because you... That's the motherfucking Crusader flag. Britain...
Did you hear what he said? They had Crusader flags out there. They had the St. George flag, which is the flag of England, and the Crusader flag out there. Okay, in this Manchester rally, I believe it was on the 18th. Okay, that's right. He was shocked when he saw the Crusader flag. I'm not shocked at all. I told you that the Crusades are coming back, but for one reason, that is to invade Israel. And I told you, and I showed you in Scripture where. In Daniel 2, right here, talks about in the fourth kingdom in verse 40, strong as iron. This was the Roman Empire. Iron shatters in pieces and shatters everything. So iron shall shatter all these and shatter in pieces and crush. And then you saw the feet and the toes, part of potter's clay and part of iron. How did this happen? The kingdom shall be divided, but shall be in it the strength of iron. It still has some of the strength of iron. For as much as you saw the iron mixed with miry clay, and as the toes of the feet. So you have, it talks about I believe the two legs of iron, okay, if I understand it correctly. Then you go into the toes and the feet of part of iron and part of clay, so that the kingdom shall be partly strong and partly broken. And then you see, and whereas you saw iron mixed with miry clay, it shall come to pass, the seed of men, in the same way. So when they say mingle themselves with the seed of men, that's actually a correct way to put it. But they shall not cleave to one another, even as iron does not mix with miry clay. What happens after that? What happens after that in the days of these kings? Or it should read in the days of the toes, the 10 toes, that's right. The iron mixed with miry clay era of this kingdom, shall the Elohim, not God, you see that, or Elah, the Elah of heaven. Now, I want to point something out to you, because we're going to see the term God a lot in this video. But the name is not God. Elah Elah, and it comes from Elohim, is what it does. Whether they show it here or not. And he was speaking to Nebuchadnezzar in the Babylonian language. and it's also standard Aramaic. Okay? But the word is related to, or it comes from, Elohim. All right. Just so you know. In the days of these kings shall the Elah of Shemaim set up a kingdom, shall set up a Malkuth, which shall never be destroyed, and that Malkuth shall not be left to another. It shall not be left to the Gentiles, but it shall break in pieces and consume all these kingdoms, starting at the feet. And it shall stand forever, for as much as you saw that the stone was cut out of the mountain without hands. The mountain is Mount Zion, by the way. And it broke in pieces the iron, the brass, the clay, and the silver, and the gold, and the great Elah has made known to the king what shall come to pass in the after part. I have pointed out to you over and over and over again, but you don't see it unless you read the words of the prophets, which is what got the Jews in trouble. They refused to read the words of the Neviim, the prophets. And it has now gotten the Christians in trouble because they refuse to read the words of the prophets. Yet, in the Christian's book, Revelation 10 and verse 7, it says, "But in the days of the voice of the seventh messenger, when he is about to sound," just shy of the sounding of the seventh shofar, the mystery of not God. You see what I showed you? It's Elah or Elohim. Should be complete, as he declared to his servants the Neviim, the prophets. What prophets? Moshe, Isaiah, Ezekiel, Zechariah. The list goes on and on and on. But the Jews didn't listen to the words of the prophets. If they would have done so, they would have immediately recognized Yehoshua as HaMashiach. The Christians don't read the words of the prophets, and because of that, they do not realize what they are doing right now in England, bringing back the Crusader flag, is scriptural. Because of what we read here in Daniel. They will mingle themselves with the seed of men, but they shall not cleave to one another, even as iron is not mixed with clay. Why is this happening? Remember, they don't want to read the words of the prophets. So, what has happened to the Christians? Let's see here. For the wrath of Elah or Elohim, correctly Jehovah Elohim, is revealed from heaven against all impiety, that's all disrespect of things that are righteous, and unrighteousness, injustice of men. So all unrighteousness and injustice of men who hold the truth in unrighteousness. And this is key. They hold the truth in unrighteousness. They hate the name of their Creator. They hate the name of the Mashiach. So they exchange it for another name. And they continue to exchange what is right for what is evil until this happens. Because that which may be known of Elohim is manifested in them, for Elohim has showed it to them. For the invisible things of him from the creation of the world are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made by creation, even more his eternal power. And it's not Godhead, it is his higher nature, so that they are without excuse. Because that when they knew, there was a time they knew Yehovah Elohim. They glorified him not as Elohim. And the scripts that I keep showing you from Martin Luther's Von Shem HaMaphorish proves that vile, insane, demonic script that the father of the Protestants wrote in that horrendous, blasphemous book. That evil and vile Catholic priest he was. They were neither thankful, and look around you. Living in the most opulent of lifestyle, having all access to all kinds of different foods, restaurants, modes of transportation, modes of communication, such as the world has never seen, and still unthankful. And they became vain in their imaginations, and their foolish hearts were darkened. Professing themselves to be wise, they became fools. And this is exactly the same disease of mind that the European, not just the Europeans, but you see what's going on in Europe, that the European heads of state thinking that somehow inviting all these third worlders into their country, and for reasons because their population was dwindling. Why was their population dwindling? Because, let me explain something here. When a population becomes rich, they don't want to have children. They want to hog all the wealth all to themselves, and they don't want an inheritor. And so the population dwindles as the older folks get old and die off. And the younger folks do exactly what their parents did until the population is dwindled, and the governments need a tax base to survive. They know they can't tell their population to multiply, so what do? They go and invite all these third worlders in, and hopefully they can assimilate into the country. But if they were to read the words of the prophets, like in Daniel, they would realize that you cannot do this. They would realize, if they would just read these words, they would realize it can't be done. It says so, it can't be done. But they refuse to read the words of the prophets. Therefore, their minds are darkened, and professing themselves to be wise, they became fools. And why did they do this? Because they changed the glory of the incorruptible Elohim into a graven image, such as an Israeli soldier destroyed in Lebanon just a few days ago. And he did it rightly so. Made like unto the corruptible man, and all other sorts of things like they have at the Vatican. 4-footed beasts and creeping things and whatever. Okay? And all of this is Europe today, but not just Europe. Why am I talking about Europe today? Well, because the 10 toes are in Europe. But it's not just them. It's the United States. It's everywhere. So, that is the reason why the Crusaders are back. And folks, you need to read about the Crusades, because the whole point of the Crusades was to take Jerusalem back away from the Turks, the Muslims. And when? Because of the fact that they did not read Daniel 2. These Christians refused. And look, let me show you something. Look, a powerful exhortation from FDR in World War II Bible given to soldiers. All right? Somewhere down in here, there we go. Among many items issued to soldiers of the Second World War, Christians received a pocket-sized volume of the New Testament and Book of Psalms. Why? Because they did not want to read the words of the prophets, and because they didn't read the words of the prophets, their eyes are now darkened. This has been the way and methodology of all Christian nations, to reject the words of the prophets. And because they did, they're not going to be ready for what happens next. And if they would, let me show you this. We'll go to Revelation. No, actually, we're going to go to Yoel 3 first. Yoel 2. Here's that word after part again. A car. And it shall come to pass, or in the after part. See, you're not going to see this in the New Testament. That word, because they translate it from Greek and not from Hebrew. I will pour out my ruach upon flesh, your sons and your daughters, and they will prophesy, and your old men will dream dreams, and your young men shall see visions. He's talking about the people of Israel in the after part. It is after the blindness is removed from their eyes. And upon your servants, upon your handmaids, in those days will I pour out my ruach. I will show wonders in the sky and in the earth, blood, fire, and palm-like columns of smoke. And so in many videos in the past, I have told you, and I was only partly right. I was right, but only partly right. But now I understand the full context of this. You see, there is going to be a gigantic meteor shower on either side of the Italian boot, geographically. Why? Because those are the abyssal zones in the Mediterranean Sea, the abyss. Okay? This prophecy is connected to that prophecy in Revelation. I will show you that in a minute. But this right here comes from, it begins with the meteor shower. And then within 5 months of that meteor shower comes the nuclear exchange. How do I know this? Well, if you bother to read, you'll figure it out. I'll get there in just a minute. The sun shall be turned into darkness and the moon into blood, facing the great and terrible day of not the Lord. You see that? It says Yehovah. Stop saying the Lord. Don't use other names in place of his great name, because that's blasphemy. All of those different names are names of blasphemy. And it shall, it says right here, those who proclaim Shem Yehovah, those who proclaim the name, that name, shall slip away to Mount Zion, Jerusalem, because that's where deliverance is going to be. You're not going to go to heaven and stay up there while the world burns. That's not how it works. See, this is the reason why they refused to acknowledge the words of the prophets. As I pointed out to you before, the Jews got in trouble for not reading the words of the prophets. If they would have read the words of the prophets, they would have known Yehoshua HaMashiach was here. And they would have known what was going to happen to him. But they refused to read the words of the prophets. And likewise, the Gentiles refused to read the words of the prophets, so their demise must be the same as what happened to the Jews. And the Jews will be raised back up again, exactly as it says in Romans 11. And some of you folks making remarks on YouTube telling me that I need to read Romans 11, you obviously have not been watching my channel, because that is the most read script on this particular YouTube channel. So, we'll go to, what was the, Revelation, is it 5? No. I don't think it, no, it's not 5. Oh, 5th. There we go. It's Revelation 9. So what I want to do today is help you connect Yoel 2 to Revelation 9 and verse 1. And the 5th messenger sounded, and I saw, and this is correct. I mean, this is incorrect. I'm sorry. It's incorrect. It is not a star. It is the word aster in Greek. And it is either a star or multiple stars. Now, it is a star as strewn over the sky, so that's a meteorite. Folks, please, 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 please pay attention. Do not be muddy in the brain. Folks, this is clearly meteors. Now, how do I know it's multiples? Okay. upon like columns of smoke. And where is this going to be? Where, what happened to? Okay. So this is going to be located. And to him was given, or to it, the multiple meteorites is going to be given a key to the abyssos. So that's a figure of speech for what comes out, what is the result of this. And it doesn't say he. See, it says to open. Doesn't say he. You see what King James Version did? You see what these biblical accounts have done? They went and added words to twist the meanings. It does not say he, it says opened the abyssos. And there arose a smoke out of the well. So the abyssos is in water. Well, of course the abyssos is in water. It's the Mediterranean Sea. So zones of the Mid Sea. I wonder if I could find it in this particular okay, so the abyssal zone is a layer in it says pelagic zone of the ocean, but he's not talking about the ocean, he's talking about the Mediterranean Sea. Abyss comes from the Greek word abyssos, meaning bottomless, at depths of 4,000 and 6,000 meters, 13,000, 20,000 feet. This zone remains in perpetual darkness. Okay, but see, they're talking the ocean, but abyssal zones, I specifically asked for abyssal zones in the Mediterranean. Okay. There we go. The latter zone is completely absent in the Mediterranean Sea, and the abyssal zone is also poorly developed and largely colonized by organisms. All right, so we're getting a little closer to the truth here. The aphotic zone, which follows a circumliteral zone, is divided into the bathyl zone, down to a depth of 2,500 to 3,000 meters. The abyssal zone, covering most of the real ocean floor to a depth of 6,000 to 7,000 meters, and the Hadal zone, the deep sea trenches below 7,000 meters. The latter zone is completely absent in the Mediterranean, and the abyssal zone is also poorly developed and largely colonized by organisms living elsewhere in the higher areas. In the Aegean Sea, the aphotic region falls entirely within the uppermost, somewhere in here. If I could find it. We'll just go between Greece and I did a video on this before. Let's see here. So there's one right here. All right. Abyssal zone is right here. And there's another one right here, is what I'm trying to tell you. Okay. I could probably find, I wanted to show you this, these three, well, abyssal zones. Let's see what pulls up here. I might have it in this particular video here, I'm not sure. But one day I guess I'll have to go and find the abyssal zones once again and show them to you, because I've put it in a video before. So, so what happened was there was great smoke that came out of that pit that the giant meteors created, and the smoke was like the smoke of a great furnace. So what we do is, okay, blood, fire, and pillars of smoke. What happens when you have a drastic, extreme event like that striking the ocean, or striking not the ocean but the Mediterranean Sea? Well, the water will turn to blood. How does the water turn to blood? Well, those of you who are familiar with marine life, you know how this works. Red tides is one example. It could be more. And of course, fire is going to come from, it's obvious, that meteor shower. Okay? And of course, the sun will be turned into darkness in those areas. Of course it's going to happen. Why? Because it's going to cause vapor and smoke. Watch this. Cephas talks about it in Acts 2 verse 9. Vapor of smoke. Alright? So it'll be vapor and smoke that's going to cause this terrible darkness. Okay? This all facing the great and terrible day of Jehovah's. So he's going to strike the earth in the abyssal zone in the Mediterranean Sea without warning. Nobody knows when it's going to happen except, wait a minute, you have a clue. You do have a clue. I've shown you this clue over and over. The clue is in Daniel 2. And whereas you saw the iron mixed with miry clay, the Europeans mixing with third world countries, they shall mingle themselves with the seed of men, and they shall not cleave to one another, even as iron does not mix with clay. And now you see the Crusader flags popping up. War is coming, folks. Great, great war is coming. And when this particular plague, when this meteor shower, and let me tell you what this meteor shower is going to look like. It's also here in, I know some of you think it's different than, you think that the sixth seal is different from the fifth shofar sound. It is not. It's the same, and I'll explain to you why. Verse 9, these martyrs of the fifth seal, they are the two witnesses. They are the two prophets that are going to gather all Israel out of the Gentiles. I opened up the fifth, when he opened up the fifth seal, I saw the altar and the souls of them that were slain for the word of not got, but Jehovah Elohim, and for his testimony which they held. And they cried with a loud voice, saying, How long, holy and true, or do you not judge and avenge our blood upon them that dwell upon the earth? And white robes were given unto every one of them, and it was said unto them that they should rest yet for a little short season, until their fellow servants, also their brethren, should be killed as they were, should be fulfilled. Now, you will say, how can you tie that in with the two prophets? Well, very easily. You look at the sixth seal, and you will, right at the beginning, just before the seventh shofar sound, that's when, if I remember correctly, that's when the two witnesses, the two prophets, come to gather all Israel. And when he had opened up the sixth seal, lo, there was a great earthquake. And the sun became black as sackcloth of hair, and the moon became as blood. Just like what's written in Yoel 2, right? Here. Sun shall be turned into darkness, and the moon into blood, and wonders in the sky and in the earth, blood, fire, and pillars of smoke. It's more detailed here. It's more detailed here, where it says, and Aster of heaven fell into the earth. How did Aster of heaven fell into the earth? Is it one, or is it multiple? Let's find out. Even as a fig tree casts her untimely figs. Well, that is clearly multiple. When she is shaken with a mighty wind, and the heavens departed as a scroll when it is rolled together, and every mountain and coastland was moved out of their place. It was so horrific. And the kings of the earth, and the great men of the rich men, and the chief captains, and the mighty men, and every bondman, and every free man hid themselves in dens and in rocks and in the mountains, and said unto the mountains and rocks, Fall on us, and hide us from the face of him that sits on the throne, and from the wrath of the Lamb. So hide us from Jehovah. Well, wait a minute. Does that mean the Creator, Jehovah, is near? Yes, it does. The implication is they can see him. Why? Because they are saying, hide us from him. And also hide us from the face of the Lamb. For great is the day, for the great day of his wrath is come, and who shall be able to stand? So this is indeed Yoel 2. This is the same. This is the reason why you must read the words of the prophets. Otherwise, you will not understand anything that is written in the new covenant. So Revelation back to Revelation, where was I? 9. Back to Revelation 9. This clearly is that same event. And this is for 5 months. And the governments of Europe will be desperately using their aircraft to try to keep the populations under control. They will lose the plot. You will see that they will be using what appears to be helicopters. The shapes of the locusts were like horses prepared into battle, and our heads of them were like crowns of gold, and on some it's not gold per se, but as they say, a crown of gold. And their faces were as faces of men, and they had hair as the hair of women, and their teeth were as the teeth of lions, and they had breastplates of iron, or what looked like iron. And the sound of the wings was as the sound of chariots of many horses running into battle. That's sounds of helicopters. And they look like helicopters when you read it. And they had points, not stings. Doesn't say stings. It says they have a sharp point on their tail. helicopter. Their power was to put men down, not out, not kill them, but to hurt them for 5 months. And then what happens after 5 months? After 5 months, it seems like perimeter. Look up the word perimeter, Russian perimeter. Look it up. Apparently there is nobody manning the... Look, because all the great men are all up in their holed up in their bunkers. And perimeter, if it senses something that is like unto nuclear strikes, it will allow a certain amount of time for their human superiors, so to speak, to figure it out. And if they don't, it will automatically be programmed to order the launching of nukes. That's right, folks. Look it up, read it for yourself, and that appears to be what is happening here. Now, why do I say Russian? Because these horses in the vision, that which sat on them, had breastplates of fire and of jacinth and brimstone. This is one of the many also ones that I have showed you many times. You go to Yar's launchers and you will see exactly what he's talking about. Yar's mobile ICBM launchers. So, this is what it looked like. Well, where's the picture? I was trying to get a big picture, and there's no picture. Okay, I'll try. Let's see if I can find a better picture. I believe this is better. Okay. So, a breastplate of iron right here. Okay, that which sat on it had a breastplate of iron. And when you look here, you see the color of fire, which is red, that's on the star. Then you see the color of jacinth, which is the ribbon of St. George. But the color, the main color is yellow, the color of brimstone. You see? And it is these that kill 1/3 of the men upon the earth. Okay? And by these three were the third part of men killed, by the fire, by the smoke, and by the brimstone which came out of their mouth. For the power is in their mouth. Yes, when it lays down in their mouth. And it says, and in their tail. For their tail was like unto, it was pointed tail like a serpent. And the tail had heads. Warheads. And why? Why did Jehovah send this stroke? Because they repented not of the work of their hands, that they should not worship a demon, the demon named Jesus, graven with gold and silver, brass, stone, and wood. Yes, at the Vatican, Jesus is graven with gold and silver and brass and stone, and all of these Sunday church services, they all have their wooden graven image of devil, a demon named Jesus. And I have showed you, I've proven to you many, many times before that Jesus is a demon. You cannot replace the name Yehoshua with the name of a demon. What did Paul say about this? We cannot have fellowship with demons. I'm trying to remember what scripture that was. Gentiles. Demons. See if I can find it. Right here, 1 Corinthians 10 verse 20. I want you to pay attention. So he warned the Corinthians. So if he has to warn them, folks, they're already doing it. Okay? I need you to understand this. If he had to warn them, they're already doing it. You don't warn somebody if they're not doing it already. But I say unto that these things which the Gentiles sacrifice, they sacrifice to devils, and not to Elohim. I would not that you should have fellowship with devils. He's warning them not to. Why? Because some of them already have. What do you think happened after he died? You think they stayed true? Of course not. If Israel couldn't stay true, how are the Gentiles going to? You say that the Gentiles are better than Israel? I'll show you proof that they are not. You cannot drink of the cup of Yehovah and the cup of demons. You cannot be a partaker of the Mashiach's table and the table of demons. Why are you provoking him to jealousy? Do you think if he has to say this, it's already too late. And he did. If he has to say this, it's already too late. Now, what scripture was I going to go to? Now, I can't remember what it was. Oh. What advantage is to be a Jew? You think, you Christians, you Gentiles, you think you're better than the Jew. You've shown this for the last 1,500 and some years. But what did Paul say? What advantage then has the Jew? Is there an advantage? Or what profit is there of the circumcision? So it's the same question. So what advantages have the Jew? He said many ways. Many ways. Mainly because, but not only, but mainly because unto them were committed the oracles of Yehovah. What if some of them did not believe? Shall their unbelief make the faith of Elohim without effect? No! You Christians are wrong when you say you have better advantage than the Jew. No, the Jew has greater advantage than you. So when the Jews rejected the words of the prophets and became blinded and were diminished as a result by the destruction of Jerusalem, and yet they have greater advantage than the Gentile, what shall happen to the Gentile who rejected the words of the prophets and they have less advantage than the Jew. You Gentiles had better get yourself together. If there are any of you, and quite frankly, if I'm going to be honest here, I have extreme doubts that there are any who are going to be among the Gentiles who are going to be ready for what's about to happen. Now, I'm not saying that there's no Gentile that's going to be saved. No. No. I have gone over that in the parable of the sheep and the goats. The parable of the sheep and goats is all about righteous Gentiles versus unrighteous Gentiles. I have gone over that many times. It is about how they treated the Jews. I know you folks, you Christians, you don't believe that, but the reason why you don't believe it is because you do not read the words of the prophets. And because you don't read the words of the prophets, you will not, let me repeat myself, you will not be ready for what is about to happen. And I have pointed out to you, we are right on the edge of the cliff. What happened in Manchester a few days ago is just one more sign. And I told you a long time ago that what was happening in Europe, the division of Europe by race, bringing all these third world people in, was going to be their undoing and cause the final crusade. I have told you that over and over again. Hopefully now you will listen. But one can be hopeful, but I have my doubts that you're going to listen, because prophecy says you will not.